Now, you sent me an article by Ron Klutz,
Mhm.
and I thought it was a really great article. It's called Woke Capitalists High on ESG. Why don't you take us through it?
Well, woke capitalists high on ESG is about how um, the environmental or climate movement has now come up with a new barrier for any corporation to leap over before they can get substantial institutional investment funding. And that's environment, social, and governance. And the problem is somebody like Pembina Institute comes up with all these kinds of questions of a company that are judged and evaluated rather subjectively by some other body. And based on that assessment, then an institutional investor decides to invest or not. Now, it used to be that people would look at a company and say, is this a good investment or not? Will people buy the product? Will it make money? Is it a profitable operation? Do the people running it have integrity? And what is the long-term view in the marketplace? And now they evaluate their investments on all kinds of ridiculous things like ESG. And really, you just have to look at the UNPRI, where the ESG guru is Al Gore. So that should tell you pretty much everything there. And then you can look at Alberta and find that the Pembina Institute is now a body that certifies ESG qualifications. And that we have that in one of our recent videos, the one that's about tides asking people to shift their pension fund investments to green. So you have to see that these people are contriving the market now. They're making it impossible to get investment funds without jumping through all kinds of ridiculous hoops that really do nothing for the bottom line for the company, but they do a lot for tying the company up with impossible barriers and things that can't really be appealed. You know, like what happens if your board doesn't have the right mix of diversity that these ESG people want? Well, what is the right mix? You know, can you have one person who happens to be of a certain religion, a certain gender, a certain color, and with a certain technical qualification? Will that one person be a diverse person, or do you have to have four separate individuals with each of those characters to create your board diversity? And do those board members actually have the skill to help the company? That's the whole idea of having a board, is that you bring people in who have some diverse skill set in business to offer insight and helpful suggestions for how to make the company run better and be more profitable.
Yeah, it's strange how companies used to be beholden to their shareholders, the people they were responsible for making profit for, and now they're responsible to these lobby groups who want diversity quotas, ethical investing quotas, which so often means green energy. And the people who are paying for it all are the shareholders who are not seeing a return on their investment.
Well, it's interesting because a big chunk of the shareholder base now is what we call activist investors.
Ooh.
And Peter Drucker, the management guru of the 70s, foresaw this back in the 70s that um, within the next 20 years or so, um, pension fund socialism would come to North America, meaning that pension funds would become the primary owners of corporations. And that has happened. But that would be probably just fine, except the UNPRI has turned them all into activist investors. And the UNPRI requires these institutional investors to sign on to agreements that are voluntary to begin with, but if you volunteer and sign on, then you have to comply or explain. So now you have this group think and group pressure to invest in things that are green and sustainable. And, you know, those definitions are pretty crazy, as we saw in Michael Moore's film. You know, people claiming, oh, we're investing in sustainable biomass, all these wood pellets. Sure, you are. You know, they're being processed by coal. They're being shipped around the world. They're making more pollution than ever. And the front man for it is funded by a green billionaire in the back to push his policy to make his investment richer. So, you know, it's really getting very difficult for companies to just do business for business sake.
If you'd like to get access to my show, as well as other great TV style shows too, like Ezra's Nightly Ezra Levant Show and David Menzies' Friday night show, Rebel Roundup, just go to rebelnews.com/subscribe. That's rebelnews.com/subscribe.